Hey, what's up everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to the In a Crowded Room podcast for episode number 17, which on this podcast we're going to talk about the rise of atheism in America. This morning I read an article that said in 2007, approximately 16% of Americans did not believe in God, were atheists. But recent studies show that that number has risen from 16% to as high as 23%. And interestingly enough, millennials carry the highest level of atheism at 36%. So why is that? I don't know the answer for sure, but my guess would be that millennials are just plugged in almost 24/7, and they're exposed to more ideas, The web changed a lot of things for a lot of people. When you're exposed to more ideas, more things are possible or not possible. For example, when I grew up, my parents did not identify themselves as atheists, but we were an atheist family. As a child, until I was 13 or 14, I definitely considered myself an atheist. It took my father overcoming his injury and going through a crazy haunting before I acknowledged that there was something out there. And mine was a slow shift from atheism to, I guess, being agnostic, to eventually saying, yes, I believe in a God. But we were never exposed to alternate ideas. It wasn't like the web. It wasn't like I could go online and find, entire groups of people that did not believe in God and, give me their theologies behind their beliefs. That never happened as a kid. I had the kids I went to school with, and that was pretty much it. Now, when I got to college, obviously that's when my mind really started to open up about the different possibilities, in which I wound up being a religious studies minor. A lot of people freak out when they learn that, but that is true, everybody. I was a double minor. I was a journalism and mass communications major with an emphasis in electronic media, and I was a double minor, one in sociology because people fascinated me, and my second minor was religious studies, which by the time I was a senior, what was really crazy is I was actually 6 credits away from having a religious studies major, in which for a time period I actually considered becoming a man of the cloth. Believe it or not. And that's funny to me now because, oh God, I don't know if there's a sin out there that I haven't committed a few times, besides the major ones, obviously. Never hurt a child, never killed a man, but I've done some dumb shit in my life, that's for sure. But the idea of there not being a God, it's interesting to think that no God, is a trend. Everything you see was created by nothing. I could actually understand the growth of atheism if you just think about television programming, for example. It's all over the place. Atheism is all over the place. For example, I'm a Bill Maher fan. I don't agree with Bill Maher on everything. In fact, there's probably 30% of what Bill Maher says I agree with. But he is a major, major player in the atheist movement. He does not believe in God. He actually thinks religion is dangerous, which of course it can be. Religion is responsible for billions of deaths throughout history. But back to Bill Maher, a very intelligent guy. He made a movie a while ago called Religulous. And it was pretty much him doing what, Michael Moore does in his films, where he goes out and kind of honeypicks the people he wants to make his point. And he went and talked to a lot of people on the fringe. The guy that thinks he's Jesus, the guy that's ready to shoot you if you try to, question his religious beliefs. And he just showed the side of religion that can be dangerous, the blanket believer that, wants to strike down anybody who wants to have a conversation about their thoughts and beliefs, and, the religious person that takes offense if you don't believe what they believe. And, the end result was this documentary, Religulous. When all cut together and strung together, he makes this very, very strong argument that basically, because human beings can't understand the universe, the planet, the concept of, who created us, the Big Bang, all that stuff, because we can't understand it, we just created these kind of, Jack and the Beanstalk stories, where he compares Jack and the Beanstalk to the story of Jonah and the whale. and how ridiculous those stories are. And they are ridiculous, but, he doesn't point out that a lot of these stories are parables. Of course, Jonah did not live inside the belly of the whale, but there's a meaning to that story. But I'm not going to, debate Christianity per se or discuss the details of the Bible. But what I do want to point out is that's how I think atheism is rising, because people like Bill Maher, who have such great influence, can string together really, really good thoughts and ideas and make a really solid point and then put that on the web and promote it for years and years and years to come. I mean, I'm very aware that every time I put out a feature film, it's not just a feature film. I'm releasing something into the digital ethos that will exist for as long as mankind exists. So I take those thoughts really, really serious because I know that my films are going to affect the viewer. And more people are going to be affected every day. That never used to be the case before the web. If someone had a thought and an idea, they would speak that thought at the moment they had it. And if someone wasn't there to film it, that thought and idea went as far as that audience went. That was immediately there. And if that audience forgot about that thought and idea, eventually it disappeared. When I was questioning the universe and God as a 12-year-old, I was quiet. I was in my backyard looking up at the sky. Now 12-year-olds go, "What is God?" And then they post it on their Facebook, "Hey everybody, what is God?" And everybody could jump in and have the conversation. But I've been asked many times, what are my beliefs? And, I used to not want to talk about it because it is an ever-changing belief system that I have. But I've grown more and more comfortable with it over time. As far as my beliefs go, I definitely believe that there is a grand designer. There is someone behind this crazy, existence that we have. Something obviously created all of this. And as to what created that something that created this, I have no idea. I stopped guessing about that a while ago. But there are just so many things that I come across that are so profound. And I just can't ignore that innate feeling inside me that says something created this. I mentioned before my friend George, who unfortunately is no longer with us. George died of cancer a couple years ago. And George also struggled for a very long time as a heroin addict. And he did not die of an overdose of heroin or anything like that, but his long-term addiction certainly sped up the process of his demise to cancer. But we had some unbelievable conversations that were really life-changing and defining in regard to my thoughts on if there is a God and if there isn't one. And you could probably hear it in my voice. I just get choked up when I think about these moments that I had with George. If you ever sit and talk with somebody about whether or not there is a God, when they have some skin in the game immediately, and what I mean by that is George knew that he was not going to beat cancer. He knew that he had a very limited amount of time on planet Earth, and he was scared because his whole life he had stuck his chest out and said, "Of course I believe in God," and he would always tell people to pray, and he was always presenting the picture of spirituality, but he was doing it more because he was a kind and a gentle person, and he wanted people to believe in something great, because George was a believer in karma, that if you, act positive, and if you're a positive person, then positivity will become you. But now that his life was slipping away, for the first time ever, he had to really reconcile how he felt about eternal life and God and if it was possible to live for eternity. Oh man, this stuff's hard to talk about. We had this amazing conversation right before my tour. I told George that I would not leave without coming over to see him. And I did. I went and picked him up, and he was not feeling good. So we were initially going to run to Taco Bell. George loved tacos, and have lunch there. But instead, we went to Taco Bell, and I just ran inside, got what we wanted, came back out, and we ended up having this long conversation inside the car. And we're sitting there, and we're crunching away on our tacos, and we don't really talk much while we're eating. He probably only got a bite or two down of his taco before he lost his appetite, which he said it was driving him crazy that he would go from being incredibly hungry, and then he would just eat a bite or two, and he'd feel sick to his stomach. And a lot of that was the chemo, which he just eventually just gave up on right around this time because he knew it wasn't working. But anyways, I had just finished eating my taco, and he was kind of quiet, and he's staring out the window, and he goes, "So have you ever thought about God?" I go, "Oh, dude, all the time, And he goes, "Do you believe in him?" I'm like, yeah, I totally believe in him. And looks at me and he goes, "No, I'm serious. Like, don't bullshit me, man. Like, do you truly believe in God?" And I go, "Yeah, George, I believe in a creator." And he goes, "Do you mean someone that just made all of this?" I go, "Yeah." And it's quiet. And he goes, "You think this creator loves us?" And I go, "Yeah, I do, man. There's a connection. And I don't think you could have that connection with somebody you don't care about." He goes, "Explain your connection." I go, "What do you mean?" He was like, "The connection you have. Explain what you're saying." And I go, "It's kind of like the hug of a mother." I go, "You could hug 100 other people, but when you hug your mother, it's just different. It's just different. It's the same physical act. You're just throwing your arms around somebody and squeezing them, but it's different." I go, "When it comes to the creator, I've personally always felt that there's something up there that doesn't want bad things to happen to me, something that wants to guide me, that wants me to do well." And he's quiet. And I know why he's thinking all this stuff, And he goes, "Well, what if there's not?" I go, "What if there's not a God?" And he goes, "Yeah, what if there's not? What if it's just nothing, just darkness?" I'm like, "Well, if there's just nothing, then I guess at the moment that it's over, then it's just over. You wouldn't feel anything. You wouldn't have any emotions." And he goes, "Isn't that sad to you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that's incredibly sad." And he's like, "I'm so afraid of that." He said, "I want what I have to matter. Us, my experiences, all of it." He said, "I want it to matter." And he goes, "If life is just over and the lights go off, then what is any of this worth?" And I said, "Well, I think it's worth the experience." And he goes, "Pretty soon I'm not going to have any more experiences, Chad." It just fucking crushed me. And he goes, "Do you believe in hell?" And I said, "I don't know, George." And he goes, "Be honest with me." I was quiet. He goes, "Do you think there's a hell?" And I go, "I don't know, George, some place where people eternally burn and just suffer forever." I go, man, some people have such a hard time here, they would argue that this is hell. I'm like, but I don't know, man. And he goes, I believe in hell. I go, you do? He goes, yeah, I do. And I said, so do you believe in the devil? And he goes, yeah, I do. And I said, well, how can you question God but believe in the devil? And he said, in my lifetime, I've seen a lot more proof that the devil is real. And I was like, oh, man. He goes, why do you think this happened to me? I go, cancer? And he goes, yeah. And I go, I don't know, George. These are like the questions of the universe, man. You know, I go, I know it's unfair. I know that, you know, you're 42 and you shouldn't have to deal with this. But I don't know why this happened. It's quiet. He starts to cry a little bit. He just says, I don't want to die, see? And he just keeps crying. He's crying. He's crying. You know, those are moments where words can do nothing but fail, so you just sit there quiet. And I said, George, I want you to think about one thing. In grand matters of the heart, of the soul, it isn't about what you can prove. You know, I said, I can't show you a mathematical equation for love. But I could tell you as my brother, I love you. And I said, there's 8 billion people in this world, George. The chance that you, some Dogtown OG from Venice Beach, would have met me, some kid that grew up in Texas in the Midwest, and we somehow became the best of friends, despite having completely different backgrounds and no connection to one another. The odds of us ever becoming the best of friends are next to zero, yet we became the best of friends. I said I realized a long time ago, man, that the best things in life are all the things that we can't prove. And he said, you ever think about taking your last breath, what that's going to be like? I said, you know, no, not the way you have. And he said, I'm not going to be crying when I go. And I said, you should, man. And he said something so incredibly profound at the end of this conversation that made so much sense to me. It's so simplistic. He said, I don't know if there's a God, but the world's a better place if you believe that there is. And it's so fucking true. And that was the last time I ever saw George physically. We spoke a few times on the phone throughout the tour, and then after about a week of him not answering calls, I was getting really worried. Until I got a call when I was in Toronto from a friend who said that he was with hospice. And I did everything I could to drive back and see George before he left. And I missed him by 2 hours. But I spoke to the last friend who saw him, and they said that surprisingly he was like George. George was very high energy, laughed a lot, was very complimentary. Every person he met, his welcome, his greeting was always a compliment. I can't tell you how many times he walked up to me and said, hey, see, dude, you're losing weight. When I had lost absolutely no fucking weight whatsoever and probably actually gained weight. You know, or he's the only guy I know that's ever complimented me on my eyes, and it felt like a genuine compliment. We were just walking in New Orleans on tour one day, and he's like, see, can I tell you something? I'm like, yeah. And he goes, I don't mean this in any kind of, you know, kind of gay way or anything, because I know you're a straight dude and everything. And I'm like, Georgie, what? What is it? And he's like, you have the most beautiful eyes, man. He's like, when you talk to me, I just love looking at your eyes. And I knew George was just being George, you know, and like, what a cool dude. What a cool dude. What a fucking great guy. So, yeah, they said that in his final couple hours, he was obviously really hopped up on, drugs and everything else to deal with the pain. But they said he was laughing and he was joking. And when they found him, he was sitting up with his hands, palms up on either side of him, like he was receiving the Lord. And right as I say that, it starts raining. I look at it this way. If the atheists are right, then it's all going to be lights out for all of us. But if the believers are right, then I'll be on the right side of that equation. And that's just a smart way to play the hand of life. Thank you all for listening to episode 17 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.